Much of what your eyes has been uncovering in these readings may not make sense to you, but do not be concerned, for adulting is not about making sense. Recall too that as you read, the spirit behind the words, the words are worlds, is getting a good look at you, which is a miracle. Another miracle underway is the unique oddity of your true self, the rather uncomfortable coming to your formless presence, the invisible spiritual mate of your physical essence coming into your awareness. The bride, as it is referred to in Hebrew teachings, becomes a growing concern in the integration stage. Of course, this mate can't just drop in, or the false self, the individual, would freak out. There are the normal discomforts of getting to know one another. In fact, this bride actually comes more into your state of awakeness, and it's rather like you went to sleep alone and you woke up in the morning and there's somebody else lying beside you, and you have to wonder how this person got here. But of course, it's not a person. It is this invisible spiritual mate to your physical essence. And again, there are the normal discomforts of getting to know one another. And so it is best that there be a courting, a truing process. Yet and still, there is no coherence without contact. It has to be a kind of consummation, which is the incorporation stage. Signs, diagnostics are signals about you, from you to you. Self coming through, a form of contact with the true in you, the invisible true in you, that part which belongs to something greater than itself. Consider it, for now, your own little plotted garden, your own little piece in the community garden that cannot be separate from the earthly landscape of growing things. So this relationship with the bride, just consider it in that form. We're not like going all the way just yet, so just bring your realization to the point that your little plot garden is the same as the entire earthly landscape of growing things. It is not separate. Just sit with that for a moment. Now, cognitive dissonance is the inability to hold the tension between growing awarenesses and the ability to respond to that new level of awareness. So it is the inability to hold the tension between your growing awareness and this new level of awareness. Okay, so there's this growth actually that is happening. So the growing, the tension of growing is what is difficult to hold sometimes, because we're feeling this push pulling, yeah, and so we get too involved with what is pushing me and what is pulling me, rather than just this Dr. Dolittle push me pull you, just say, oh, that's what I am right now. I am this push me pull you lama, one head facing one way and one head facing the other. Like, how on earth could this be growth? How could this be movement? But it is also a place you can just sit in for a moment to respond to what is almost a way of harnessing. There you go, right? That is the way to hold the tension, is to picture yourself as this push me pull you. If you're not familiar with it, you might have to look it up, but the Dr. Dolittle movie, and then one of the characters was a push me pull you llama. Okay, so for most, before this is going to help you with this piece. Cognitive dissonance takes the form of confusion. When courageously explored, confusion can be fertile ground for this growing awareness. But let us start small, as with your garden plot. For now, start to be aware that songs speak differently than words and teachings differently than conversation. So when we hear people speak a teaching or sing a medicine song, we learn not to listen to them the same as conversation. And likewise, you learn not to listen to, we might call it idle conversation, with the same, attention as you would a teaching, because, most of what we say in day to day is just blah, blah, blah. But for some reason, we give that so much importance. So here's the art of differentiation, okay? Songs speak differently than general language, and teachings differently than conversation. Though it may sound like reading and talking, the writings and the online meetings of this course, which we call CAR sessions, convey the teachings in a holistic manner, drawing upon the patience and love necessary to build and strengthen your connectivity network. So we also refer to this as bringing your precious sensitivity back online, the fullness of it. This may seem tedious at times, the way this course works, but necessary for all that has been said before by the likes of Christ and Buddha, to flow in a spiral pattern as to flush your familiar automated thinking, all the suggestions and hypnotisms towards direct connections with who you are and where you come from. Visualize a spider's web now. It's linear holding lines and its spiral cohesion lines. The linear lines are set first, and then come the spirals. So a lot of this, your linear lines have already been set, but that of itself does not make the web. Now, I don't know if you know this, but a spider builds its web using only touch. For despite having many eyes, it is severely far-sighted. We say so far as to be sacred, sort of out of sight. The dimensions of the sacred will become meaningful in your life when you stop considering only the visible as real. The invisible, that which is actually closest to you, for it lives inside you, is what sacred refers to. So we say out of sight, but not out of range, because it's inside of you. The sacred is inside of you. It is not reserved for regalia, ritual, or a guru visible to the eye, though all of these things call forth the sacred, just as a teacher or teaching actually means to bring forth. And it is the heart that responds, that negotiates the meeting of the mates. You could say love even, and that's why we associate love to mating on a human level. But it is actually more of a, outward expression or a metaphor for the deeper. And with our significant others, as we might call them, we also get caught up in the physical, the sensory realms, which makes it very difficult to go inward because there's so many distractions, so much stimulus, the brain firing off all these different reactions. And so it is, as I say, a reflection of the process, because it is sometimes equally as difficult to go inside and meet this sacred and get along with it. So it is that cognition and even contact relies on the invisible. Okay, so cognition and even this contacting that we must do in order for cognition to arise relies on the invisible. Words are the masculine energy force of the sacred that compartmentalize and give structure. So you could see words as those linear anchoring lines of the spider's web, which are connected to the vast possibilities of the spontaneous experiential sequence of the spiraling feminine. Often comes after. The two forms of emotion, fear and love, convey signals of movement. Fear may be expressed as a push me emotion based in reduction theory, which is also known as homeostasis. And it is a state of waiting, which can also come with anxiety. Love is a pull me emotion based in incentive theory or reinforcement, which is experienced as a calling and excitement. Okay, so here we have the push me, pull you, love and fear, the two forms of emotion. But you can sit in the tension of them. You can hold the tension between waiting and calling, the wait and the hearing the call, the tension between anxiety and excitement. Because both evoke motivation, which is the root of the word emotion. They evoke motivation towards the sacred. So again, if you're the Lama, you're the push me, pull you. You just visualize as a Lama with two heads, one facing one way, one facing the other. You think, well, won't I get stuck? No, you're like grounded. You're just here. There's nowhere to go. And you have to hold the tension between anxiety and excitement, love and fear. They are not actually opposites. They are simply variations in movement. But if we run off in one direction, fear, or run off in the other direction, love, we're not harnessing the energy that is there. Okay, more like we're just spinning our wheels in that way that doesn't really get us anywhere, but right back to where you started. I'm sure you've all experienced that. Okay. So when one is aware of how these two basic emotions work and work together, okay, they're not opposing, one can respond with a new energy, one of not being pushed and pulled, stepping out of that victimizing place and get to the enterprising business of using them to channel your sacred feelings to spirit, that it may send you exactly what you need to prepare your guest house for its coming. So we're using the word spirit here, soul, higher self, or capital S self, your true self, your sovereign being. When we get together, our first meeting, we're going to talk about the circle of life, the toroid mandala. Just consider a mandala for now. These are all names, components of the invisible other, of the bride. Let's put it that way. Okay. So just be aware, even sacred, the word sacred. So there's an interchangeability of terms here. And if we just say in this, the enterprising business of using them to channel your sacred feelings. Okay. So that you may receive exactly what you need to prepare your guest house for its coming. Because ultimately, this is all you. One of the best ways to access your sacred or invisible internal feelings is through the use of intent and the dream time. And we will tap into this in the flow of this course more and more. So we're just going to touch into it right now. So the dream time is both guide and healer for the adult. Though you are addicted to making choices about where you should live or work or what to do next, these choices in a techno-industrial society are erroneous, particularly as you adapt to your place as an adult. Here, the only choice is to stay on the path of the sacred, the red road, or not. Now, the red road is not necessarily based upon the teachings of those with red skin. It is based in the understanding that all have red blood. Okay, so again, we in this, I'm kind of going a little bit back and forth in this reading, and it talks again here about the singular two-headed Lama, skilled in the alchemy of blending give and take as a non-dualistic approach, known in the spirit world as cooperation. So there's push me, pull you as a singular two-headed Lama, a Lama being a animal, by the way, but it's also what the Buddhist teachers of the Dharma are called, lamas. And also in the Huichol, there's the two-headed eagle, which is this also sort of sign of liberation. Skilled in the alchemy of blending give and take as a non-dualistic approach, known in the spirit world as cooperation. Here's another example of cooperation from Osho. He says, sadness gives depth, happiness gives height. Sadness gives roots, happiness gives branches. Happiness is like a tree going into the sky, and sadness is like the roots going into the womb of the earth. Both are needed. The higher a tree goes, the deeper it goes simultaneously. So cooperation is the essence of harnessing the tension. When you have harnessed the tension between the two heads, you are in cooperation. And cooperation is the basis of the spirit world. So by being in cooperation, having a deep understanding of what that is, you are accessible by the spirit world, I will say. You're not in it necessarily, but you're at the same frequency of it. There's a difference there between being in the spirit world and being, calling or stepping into the frequency of it. And again, we're going to explore this more. So as said, you can be happy and sad. Oops, well, apparently I was muted there as well. So we dropped out. Wow. And we were just talking about cooperation. So cooperation is a frequency that is very close or dear to the spirit world. And but to go into the spirit world, you must have no fear. You cannot be in the spirit world and in fear. It's one of the sort of exempts of the rule of cooperation in a way. There are other things you must cooperate with in order to leave fear behind. So, but cooperation is a very, very tight with the spirit world. So in cooperation, you can be happy and sad at the same time. You can even be dying and healing at the same time. Likewise, just because I trust myself doesn't mean I'm not shaking as I enter new territory. So here again, we can, in cooperation, we can hold anxiety and excitement. Yeah. So, when we go into something new, our knees can still be shaking. And this is how you might feel torn as to know which way to go as well sometimes, because we're so geared to what do I do, which way do I go, and rather than jump into that, it's just be here now, be here now. And sometimes it is your very heart that says you must, and your very heart that says you cannot. And it's in the story of first mother and first father. And this can come up at a point of desperation, that your heart tells you, yeah, you must do this. But your heart also says, but how can I? How could I possibly do that? That will come up in desperation, which is a stage, of course, as you remember perhaps from the step on problems. When we don't face our challenges straight on, or we sort of fumble around with them, it can move into trouble, problems, trouble, and desperation, and then danger. And as a planet, we are pretty close to the desperation stage right now. And so this ability to hold the tension, the courage, you have to have the courage to hold this tension. It's very important right now. Facing death takes courage. And as we say, these initiations, the process of being a human is continually coming upon death and moving through it. Birth and death, birth and death. This is the process of living. Cycles and cycles and cycles of births and deaths. But our society has become death phobic. So it's not going so well. We're here to get on board. So sometimes thinking you have to make a decision can make you feel crazy. In fact, during the courting processes, thinking will make you crazy. So your automated thinking is pretty futile in the courting process. What is particularly crazy making is that you are not happy because you think everything you do is for the self, and there isn't one. I'm going to say that again. You're not happy because everything you do is for the little s self, and there isn't one. So there's that kind of black hole, never satisfied because you're feeding something that does not exist. And a starting point out of this insanity is to return to your inner garden, your little plot, your very own paradise in the making that supports your field, quote unquote, field, to create, grow, and learn you as the capital S self, which it does via the living or birthing and deathing of life. This is actually the responsibility of every adult. It's written in this birthing and dying cycles of life that are the actual responsibility of each adult. So we say actual responsibility is so you have to actualize this. The actualized cycles of birthing and dying. So the analogy that life is like an onion is significant, yet still a linear concept. I consider life an onion because it can make you cry, which is fine, for water is necessary for your inner garden, your inner guidance system that is in tune with the invisible power of love that carries an intrinsic intelligence of how to best serve and govern the living or birthing and dying cycles of life, which we could call living. When one accesses the garden within them, They may indeed feel sad, for love will show you where you have made mistakes that you have not yet learned from, where your seeds have been stunted, where you have planted things and just walked away thinking they will just take care of themselves. But all of this is a sign that you are getting to the bottom of things, the depth of the well that is love, which inevitably brings happiness rather than suffering. Recall that suffering is attached to thinking. And we have said before, make happiness your companion, not your goal. So suffering is attached to thinking, and learning does not require much thinking. Yet the garden must be tended to. And for this, there is your precious sensitivity that is just now being called to duty. For many, these writings may seem intellectual, yet it is the deeper heart field of intelligence in which these words are planted. Learning to love is one of the toughest parts of being human, like teasing rain from the desert to some. But then there is such a thing as a rain dance, believe it or not. My rain dance came with the inner realization that I did not love my children the way they deserved to be loved. That is, to the capacity in which love possessed them. Now, no one told me this is what happened. For realization, which is an awareness rather than a thought, can arise only from your internal soil. So this is something too, that when you're in your inner garden, love can show you things that you didn't know were there. As it was, and basically what love showed me was that I provided everything for their physical survival. I even taught them about death and attempted to prepare them for life as best I knew how. But in truth, I did not love them, could not touch into the fresh love they still possessed because I didn't know, had forgotten. My own love kind of, wilted, not tended to, nearly dead itself from living not as a human. And again, this comes from the denial of death that most of us, the kind of society we were raised in. And so, at best, I taught my children how not to love. Apparently, I also taught their father this, who I am no longer with. And so when I say no one told me this about my children, it's funny, he did say this to me when we were in a court of law, just getting to the end of our sort of divorce. And we weren't actually married, but he was with somebody else, and he said, I'm learning to love now. He said, you taught me how not to love. And this was just outside, not in the court. This is we were saying goodbye, actually, in the parking lot. And feeling very sad, feeling very, very sad. So he said, you taught me how not to love. And I remember thinking, gee, I wish somebody had taught me that. So, this is something we're going to explore actually in our first car session too. So this is this questioning our automated thinking. So I say, no one told me that I didn't love my children as I could have, or whatever. I'm getting caught up in this. So this is, but now see, we're going live here. This is what can happen. Okay. So let's just go back though to the narrative, so to speak. Okay. I taught my children how not to love. And there's actually quite a great beauty in the not, which we're going to talk about as well. This is orality. Orality is based on what is not. So, but for me, in the depths of this, both with the children and their dad, sadness brings tear to my eyes, even decades later. Now, this is a good thing because regret, which is a direct descendant of blame, has very limited access to love, where sadness, its most intimate of partners, can always reach that spot that love alone cannot. Now, what you also saw in my speaking here, if you're following along, which is a good idea with the actual words in the script of the step, confusion came in there. And so, because of what I'm doing right now, reading this and bringing it forth, I don't want to go right into it, but in my own time, I will. Okay, so I'm going to look at this again of where did this come from that I did not love my children to the highest possible ability, and also true empathy can come in here, because whatever was, it is not necessarily what is. And that can be transformed. That's why prophecy and history are one circle. It's all a circle. Okay. So there was some confusion that came in there, because that's where this is real time. This is all happening in real time. Okay. But we're going through it just bit by bit, and it can get very complex. Yeah, at times. Okay. So, but the point here is that where regret, which is a direct descendant of blame, has very little access to love. So here we are again, right? So in the healing path, the guidance is that if we stay in regret, we're going to have limited access to love, whereas sadness, its most intimate of partners, can always reach that spot in love. And it is my deepest and sincere wish that these signs posted in your awareness reach out to you like the limbs of the tree, unraveling you as they have me, that you find your way to truly loving your loved ones. So it is also for this that we spend much time upon this course on parenting, which begins with the release from one's own parental constructs, known as the childhood myth. The seemingly unapproachable ringleader, the child controller, call it, currently in charge of the invisible world. And it does this via what we call the childhood myth. The enemy within that has one resist all external parental structures as if they weren't created by you, controlled by you, like puppets on a string. So all of this is, we're going to also speak again about the brave, excuse me, as we go along, the right of the brave, which is to touch the enemy. And we will be doing this slowly. So it is important to note that to force oneself to believe and to accept a thing without understanding is a political move. So most of us have done this. So if someone did say to me, you didn't love your children like you could have, if I accept that without a very deep understanding of all that that touches, is a political dualistic move. So we've engaged in duality when we believe or accept something without understanding it. So it is that this course is designed to build or expand your understanding. So your bandwidth of understanding is quite small right now. And we're going to widen that bandwidth, expand that territory of understanding, which is a right of the adult. The two rights of the adult are responsibility and understanding. And this is RIGHT, right? So the best application of understanding at this stage is to observe your emotional body as it aches and longs for emotional connection, but bumps into old programs and conditioning, blocking the exchange, the sacrifice necessary for making change, small as it may be. This is due to your emotional field being marked off with do not cross, police tape, by this controller, the uninitiated child. It should also be clearly understood here that consciousness itself does not recognize an object or word, only the living meaning or frequency within it, and can starve without direct access. So if we latch onto words with our knowing, our knowledge of them, we're actually starving consciousness. Understanding, as opposed to knowledge, has a sort of blurry awareness of the presence of an object, word, or color without ability to name it. So again, understanding is closer to consciousness than knowledge. So at the point of individuation, there is no other. Only everything as it is. And this is the highest level of understanding, known as human consciousness. But just as many of our cells come of the mineral, plant, and animal worlds, there are more levels or seeds of consciousness that a human has access to. So understanding is one of them, but it is sort of the right of human consciousness. The commonality of human and plant consciousness lies in the mutual capacity to play more than one role. So you can see plants cataloged as, this plant is good for this, and this plant is good for that, or this plant belongs to this family and such. And those are handy, especially the ones of which families, for identifying a plant. But it even doesn't matter. Ultimately, you have the capacity to approach any plant, and through cognition and contact, listen to what that plant has to tell you, because a dandelion can make medicine for different people. It can make different medicine for different people. All plants have the capacity to do this. Okay. Likewise, everything has the ability to be read more than one way, including you. So you have all these programs running that keep reading yourself the same way. Okay. So this ability for to be a multidimensional being is due to the influence of great mystery, keeper of the unknown. Yet, to keep things comprehensive, so to speak, just as each sign of the zodiac has multiple aspects, do they also rely on one another for their mutual significance? So nothing can exist on its own. Everything is relative to what is beside it. But we tend to have compartmentalized this own business. This is mine. This is the child, right? No, it's mine. You can't have it. And we don't want to let go of it. Yeah. And that's the limitation. That's limiting your expansive capacities. So all are a part of the great, capital G, great. And this part is best described in the word as the temperament or shape, if you will, of soul. So again, this word soul, spirit, the invisible bride. Or the invisible, which is actually, we call it the bride, which is also a part of you that is to be integrated. So we're great mystery and great spirit, you could call them. So if that invisible part of us is as great mystery and great spirit, our most ancient mother and father are it is. Okay? So you as an individuated being live as. There is no other. You are as. And our mother and father, if you will, are it is. It and is. So right here, you can step out of all your parental construct, your mother, father conditionings, and accept great mystery as your mother and great spirit, as your Father, as it is. And consider now from the Bhagavad Gita, which is another way of saying, as it is. Great Trinity. That includes you. So we just touched on true empathy. So true empathy comes of our ancient lineage and is common amongst all life forms. So again, true empathy is also the pathway to connecting with all life forms in their uniqueness. But their uniqueness also is, it lives in the highest potential. Your uniqueness lives in or as your highest potential. Okay, so, and again, the plants and the stone people and the tree people, true empathy just comes naturally for them. Humans are least experienced with it because we're also the last ones here. So my daughter was just talking, she has grades 1 to 4. And the grade 1 sometimes gets frustrated because the grade 4 reads so well. So she has to remind the grade 1, well, you're not there yet. You know, they've been here longer than you, the grade 4. So same thing, trees have been here longer than us. Stone people, way. Viruses have been here way longer than us and have deep empathy. So, okay, so this true empathy is described in the Course in Miracles as to see or hold a person in the highest version of themselves, even if they cannot see or hold it for themselves. Now, related to the virus, you know, if you get the virus, a virus, and you work through it, can you, in that, you know, I mean, I've had some really bad flus. Boy, I talk about them in this course. Some like the one pain, you know, I think it was in the Story of Pain, which is Stone A. That was a flu. That was a virus that I had that helped me connect with pain, you know, in being very sick. So this true empathy is, again, to hold one in the highest version of themselves, particularly a person, an individual, even if they cannot see or hold it for themselves. Yeah. So this true empathy is handy because caring for others is highly complex, with yarns and stories that connect this to that, and knitting from the childhood myth, the controller's controlling mechanism. Yet, as the medicine wheel works with the complexity of the circle of life, breaking it down into more digestible parts, complexity can be experienced with simplicity via true empathy. The best way right now is to paint your eyes with an explanation of how to work with complexity. Okay, so just for a moment, maybe even just sit back, take your eyes off. If you're following along the words here, whatever. Picture yourself inside a 3D Celtic knot in constant motion. Okay? So if you are inside the knot, you're on the path, so to speak, you realize it is not actually a knot, yet its weave is never ending. And now I ask you to feel this. You're inside the Celtic knot, moving along. You don't even know where you're going. Okay, you have no idea. But you understand, you feel that it is never ending. Now, at first you go, oh yeah, this is fun. And then you go, oh man, how do I get out of here? Yeah, that's okay too. Just feel what is there. Because without feeling, one cannot understand complexity. And complexity is the closest thing we have to being in the mystery. in our mother. You know, so many people want to return to the womb. Of course, those people don't realize that life is the process of moving from one womb to another. But let's just sit with silence and complexity now. And as you're in this fluidity of movement, you might also hear in the swooshing, the constant motion, out with the old and in with the new. And how, if you also connect into your heart, which is much like that Celtic knot, its continuum, and that the flushing out of the old and in with the new is taken care of by your lymphatic system. So, wouldn't be a bad idea now to stand up and put your feet shoulder width apart on the floor and raise your arms up to your sides. And whenever you feel yourself in complexity or knotted up, is to take this stance, to keep the fluid flowing, living in as the image of the individuated. So we picture this on the step as the Vitruvius man. Maybe you're familiar with the Burning Man symbol as well, but this one is in the circle, right? Like on the path of induction. So when you're in complexity and you feel, again, this kind of that, you know, the push-pull, the anxiety and the excitement, is to actually do this physical stance and raise your arms up just above your ears. And so the blood, you know, a lot of blood flowing down to the heart, but you're very grounded in your feet. And you take the stance of Vitruvius man. So you are, you know, these stages in the induction from individual to individuated, they come in bits. So here we have the opportunity to stand in your individuation for a moment, to let that come into your garden. So, you know, you could say this is like fertilizer or something. You know, there's lots of different things you need to bring into the garden to help things grow. There's fertilizers, there's water, there's, you know, sand or peat moss, you know, all these different things. So this kind of like we're bringing individuation into ourselves. It's not somewhere we're going to reach. We have to integrate it, right, and incorporate it. So literally taking this stance when you feel the tension of anything is very helpful. But you'll note, if you look at the image on the step, that the left foot is turned as if about to walk. You know, for to walk is to stay with progress. We can't just stand in this, take this stance, you know, we have to keep walking. So, you know, progress is to grow, and to grow is to love, and to love is to live, which occur simultaneously with that first step. Now, sometimes this step will take one onto the black road where it is difficult to get through to you. This is kind of where people can dig in their heels. One is truly on their own on the black road. So all of this childish, it's mine, you can't have it, is really up for the pickings on the black road. And it can be very tough. But just so, as the term implies, on your own, voluntary simplicity must come from within. So the black road is a kind of condensing, and there's an image here again in the step of all of that childish, it's mine, you can't have it, which belongs in the West to the collective unconsciousness. And on the other side, East, we're calling conditioning. So the black road is not a fun place to be in, very high tension. A lot of tension there, and you have to learn how to harness the tension. which also is done through what we call voluntary simplicity. Now, this whole thing is seen, the Black Road, like a seesaw from the perspective of the inner child. The inner child is playing with it. It's going, let's just dip into conditioning. Let's dip you into the collective unconscious and then into conditioning. So you have no idea, what's you and what's other, basically. So it's a part of the process of the brave, and it's overseen as well by the ancestors. So the ancestors, they do this they push us and pull us. They do. It's the ancestors that are sending us these energies. So, here you are on this Black Road, seesaw to the child, and also kind of seesaw at the whim of the ancestors. But they push and pull us like a good wind in order to communicate with us. And so again, you've got the tension of collective unconsciousness, we'll say the collective shadow and your personal shadow. And it's also being tweaked by the inner child, the controlling inner child, and the ancestors. So you're actually being stretched in 4 directions. So for most of us, it can be a maelstrom, quite overwhelming. But it is in this that the brave must surrender. There's much power in this place as well, but as they say, to pick up power, one must fall to their knees. And recently, I felt a bout of hopelessness, helplessness. And again, like all things, you can be on the Black Road and come back from it, and then you may visit the Black Road again. So these things are not finite, like part of cycles, particularly the dying cycle, dying part of the cycle. So many times I've come, more recently especially, but I think, I remember even as a child, to these hopelessness, helplessness feelings, or this place, and the way it appeared recently is that, maybe it's time to step away from this work. I'm just going to put this course down and just let it rest for a while, let it be, do something that appears to be easier in the moment, just go back to massage work or something simpler, surrender to what is as I perceive it upon the seesaw as a kind of escape. Oh, I'll just be with what is, But then surrender grabs me by the shoulders, one hand on each shoulder and says, plunks me down and says, this is where you are. Plants me on my 2 feet, and then turns me to look back to the people. And from there's a tidal wave coming, a windstorm, a sandstorm. And surrender says, to this you must surrender while standing your ground. So here I'd like to quote the words of Bayo Akamalafe from the Yoruba people. He says, quote, I reckon we are learning a way of staying with the trouble when escape isn't an option. I imagine we are cultivating ways of tilling the soil of hopelessness and generating new senses while in Egypt. Again, that's in quotations. So he's referring back in history and coming into prophecy. And Egypt in Hebrew was called Mitzrayim. I'm not saying that right, but it means a tight place. So when we come to the tight place, which is the Black Road, kind of being on the spot, that tension going in 4 ways. He says, when you're there, we are learning a way of staying with the trouble. Okay, so trouble is just that first level of meeting a challenge when escape isn't an option, before it becomes desperation or danger. And he goes on to say, I imagine we are cultivating ways of tilling the soil of hopelessness and generating new senses. So here again, we are activating our precious sensitivity. Some people talk about activating more strands of DNA. But honestly, RNA has been here way, way, way longer than DNA. So being in a tight place on the spot, the Black Road even. Sorry. Okay, is a diagnostic that you are moving from one womb to another. One cycle of the infinite cycles of life to another, so entirely on one's own as that may feel. Instead of digging in one's heels to prevent the movement, I actually spelled heel, H-E-A-L, I'm changing it there. One can dig deep into our lineage or even into healing, all the way home to the common home from which all originate. The route back may include a visit with one of our eldest ancestors, the virus. From beyond this is the home, for beyond virus even is the home. Home being heaven on Mother Earth, where there is no such thing as other. Because other, the word, just, if you're not looking at the step right now, is just basically a disconnect from mother. Yet very few can actually remember or connect with it. So it is to remember that you are here in this course, the initiating sequences of it to bring you all the way through induction, which may take years. So we have said this is 8 months or so process. And, in some way we say it's 8 months because like in the lodge is when we go into the sweat lodge, it's a gestation phase. So this course also is the gestation phase. And in gestation is where you really grow. And then you will change your skin, so to speak, and move on and continue to grow. But this is a very important stage, this ritual education in human development. This looking at of the vast content of mind, which is actually what you do as an adult. So we are taking you over or around, taking a little bit of a detour from the Western Front. It's kind of a blockade there, and making our way into the the North Territory from the smallest point of it in the center, and then you grow into it. Just visualize too. So that quadrant is kind of the triangle of the in the square. And we're going to enter it from its smallest point, just like in the yin yang there's the yin has a entry point, and then it grows like a womb. And then when that womb's finished, it touches into the next womb, which is called yang, and also just from the small point of it. And then there's a pregnancy. You can see it grows, the belly, so to speak, of the yin and the yang grow. So that's the whole thing of, can men be pregnant? Well, you get where we're going with that. Let's not go any further. Let's just stay right here. Okay, this may take years. So fortunately, we have been given conviction, which basically works with 3 simple words, 3 little birds on your doorstep even. And those words are yes and no. 3 words, yes and no. If you have broken a law, you might have to pay some penance to your honor. Yes? But it does not negate your original essence of innocence. No, it does not. So it is that yes works with no in the cooperative and. So and is living in between the worlds of yes, no, which is really all the heliotropic consciousness has to say or listens to. Yes and no, not even or, it's and. Okay, because they always coexist, just like the answer is in the question. So you might have done something wrong and there's a consequence to it, yes, but it does not negate your original essence of innocence. No. Okay, just say with that. You might have done something wrong, so to speak, and paid the consequences of it, or experienced the consequences of it, but it does not take away from your original essence of innocence. No. Okay, so furthermore, the same sign can communicate yes to one person and no to the one standing right next to them. And from this comes the teaching, you don't have to see what I see to get it right. You see the dirt on the floor, he sees the film on the window, and she sees the cobwebs in the rafters. And together we get it done. Taking this into full consideration will undoubtedly alleviate the stress of perceiving someone having a different experience of the same thing as a threat. Perhaps even an opportunity for true empathy to come through, rather than the kind that simply sucks. So somewhere in the website too, and we talk about this, the common form of empathy sucks, because we just take in what the level the person's at, they're suffering, basically. So common untruth empathy, you will suck other people's suffering and kind of dig it, that's the thing. And get some kind of pleasure out of that. So, but that just keeps everything kind of stagnant, yeah? It's a bit more like junk food. So it is said, be not afraid of the stranger kissing you. There are certainly some strange angels about. Let them show you a thing or two about getting off the teeter-totter. In fact, getting over being the bully or owner of the seesaw. Okay, sometimes, the playground, there's and that's kind of the effect of the inner child, is that, it's my seesaw. The view from the high end of the teeter-totter is greater than the low end, but of course, each must have its turn. So you'll see as the teeter-totter goes up in the conditioning side, you'll see the collective unconscious more clearly. And when you're up in the collective unconscious, you see your own conditioning more clearly. Okay? But you're always on the other side of it, which is a good thing, because you need distance to get a better sense of what's there. Now, to move on to the stable, more stable, even higher realms of emotional intelligence and maturity of humility, there are the 7 Lakota virtues, of which humility is one. And these are regarded as the essential ingredients for learning with all our senses. We can only listen and pay true attention to something when we let go of our preconceptions. So knowledge, right? The knowledge that is already there. We can only listen and pay true attention to something when we let go of our preconceptions, knowledge. So here we cannot feel any arrogance over nature and its creatures. So you're going to come back to the tabula rasa, the blank slate. There's no feeling of arrogance over nature and its creatures. We cannot assume we already know the answers or that we are better or higher than another. Humility is not about humiliation, self-abasement, or penitence for sin. It is a freedom from pride and arrogance that recognizes equity and equality. Humility requires us to get over the hill, or the upper edge even. So it's not enough just to have seen it. Now we have to go into it. We've seen the higher view. Let's go into it. So consider this now. At a certain age, it is said that you are over the hill. I know I've heard that because I'm in my 50s, you know? You're over the hill. Like, thank you. Thank goodness. So one is who is mature has gone to the hill of ignorance, climbed it to see farther across the vast prairie, and come back to tell the people what they have seen. Okay, so you get this view from the teeter-totter, and you come back to the people to tell them what you have seen. Now, again, the path of individuation, people is someone who's awake. There's no point in seeing what you've seen and bring it back to someone who's still in ignorance. Okay. So you go over ignorance and you go out over the other side. So you go from individual over the hill to the state of being awake. And that's where maturity actually starts. So then to initiate adulthood is to grow your ability to see, which strangely enough comes with the ability to feel, not in the way of the 5 aggregate senses, but in the entire cooperation of your precious sensitivity. The right of the brave is pivotal in enacting the vastness of one's precious sensitivity, in which there can be no other. This right is centered on risk, which we have begun to uncover, disentangle from fear and trouble in step 3, because risk belongs to challenge, not problem. And with these challenges are necessary to grow. Problems are more like, I don't know, overwatering your garden. Then they get a virus or a mold anyway. So, okay, risk belongs to challenge, not problems. And we have to untangle fear. So fear, this one side of the llama is, as is love. They're both kind of covered in English ivy. They're getting a little strangled by other things, other. So anyway, we're going to address them as we go. And one of the things that it must be there for this uncovering is actually 2 things really, is permission and willingness, which are actually the same thing. They're one of those circles. But willingness, the aspect of it, willingness, is a lightening up and not taking oneself nor the actions of others quite so seriously, yet paying careful attention to the living meaning and wisdom they impart via the diagnostic skill of the practical mystic. Now, do you recall how we said earlier that wisdom often begins with the word don't? Okay, I'm going to offer you now a good dose from Tilopa to see us through. We're almost there. Tilopa was, was said to receive the way to enlightenment in a vision published as the Mahamudra teachings. These are called the 6 words or nails of advice from Tilopa. Of course, there are more than 6 words, but that's the way they present this. So the first is, now you can use these when you're on the Black Road, and when you're in that place of learning how to harness the tension. Okay, you can put these nails down so you're not getting pushed and pulled. And these are, and this would be good to look at in step 1, don't recall. Let go of what is past. Don't imagine. Let go of what may come. Don't think. Let go of what is happening now. Don't examine. Don't try to figure anything out. Don't control. Don't try to make anything happen. And the last one is rest. Relax right now and rest. So again, these are grounding nails to stop this seesaw, to get off the seesaw, the teeter-totter, It keeps you teetering, tottering, you know, and teeter is like apprehension, and totter, it would be like a feeling like a vertigo, like you're going to fall. And you know, again, there's a tension within that. So that now with these 6 words or nails, go of the past, let go of the future, let go of what is happening now, which is thinking. Don't try to figure anything out. Don't try to make anything happen. Rest, relax right now. Get off the teeter. For now, it would be wise to take linear thinking out for a spin, as to think not that it knows where it is going. You see, the best cure for brainwashing is more brainwashing. So this course is, we call it a laundry as well. There's aspects of the wash and the spin and the rinse cycles, etc. Now, this is not to engage with your automated thinking, but to question it. Remember that the art of overthinking is one of the dark arts, capable of creating problems that aren't or weren't even there, and so calling forth doubt and its cohort, mischief. Fortunately, we also have the capacity for critical thinking, which can be summed up in one line. If I were you, which I am not. End of story. No projector and no screen. Take your thoughts and actions to hand, but for God's sakes, don't point those things at anyone until awareness steeps you with the wisdom that you no longer have to believe every thought that comes into your head. This is the crux of the Black Road. You are believing every thought that comes into your head, and the 6 snails, the wisdom of Tilopa, will break through that. Now, when you point a finger at someone, you see you are sure to get your own. You see it is just as important to stop projecting as it is to stop being the screen, so as to watch and allow the flame to keep moving. Sure, only as the flame can be, that it will go out and rise again. So linear thinking was taught to us through phonics in school. And they are the primary, and this is some of the primary culprits, we'll say, of misunderstanding. It was like a corralling of our natural dyslexic abilities into the linear. There's a video, and there's a link on the step I made called Duck, Duck, Goose. And we review this root of the infernal circle that enforces making sense, which is always based on the childhood myth. Now, it is good for you to know of these things, and also that sonar is underway with the task of alleviating this automated thinking. Okay, but this also requires from you a broader understanding of things and to stop making sense, yet mature all the senses that you have been given. If there is one way to define enlightenment, it might be the capacity to feel profound joy, compassion, and loving kindness for all beings. It is the acceptance of all things in all beings, their wholeness, and so your own, for you are a part of wholeness. Likewise, love all your feelings as if they are the divine, for they all come from the divine. The anxiety, the excitement, the sadness, even regret. The divine is the portal in which the drops of consciousness may come to you. Yet be not greedy and be not drowned by them. If tears come, let them come and let them go. Whereas tears are a sign for spirit to come, so is their cessation a sign that it has arrived at your beckoning call. So when we shed tears, that we don't get lost in them. So we're touching, right? The shedding of tears is we're touching into that sadness, but as a brave, we're not being overcome by it. And we know that the tears are a sign. We say, okay, spirit, I'm in a vulnerable place. I'm ready for you. And then when you stop crying, is that spirit has come, has answered, arrived at your beckoning call. Indeed, a single tear acts faster upon the spirits than whining and complaining ever could. That said, where grieving is in order, cry your eyes out, because you're likely grieving for you may be grieving for the loss of a loved one. And so when we wail, when there's a time for wailing, there's also people who specialize in that the spirits all come because they're helping that one pass over as well. So it is true, there's nothing like the presence of tears also to open the hearts of others. And I see this all the time in ceremony and encourage people to let the tears come in ceremony. And two, you can do nothing against the will of another. So I cannot make anyone cry. If the strange angel of grief unrealized that is anger visits. Okay? This is one of these strange angels kissing us. So anger is a strange angel of grief, as is denial, bargaining. So we'll get into the Kubler-Ross phases of grief along the way too. So if anger arises, set a place for it at your table and let it cleanse you to the depths of your heart. Again, don't point that at anybody. Don't point that anger at anybody. It's because it's also just a thought. It's a thought that is found energy in your anger. And thoughts are always fighting for a place in your consciousness. So a thought will come in, and if it meets with an emotion, for instance, or a feeling like anger, and you let it hang out there for a really long time, then it gets like top dog in your consciousness. And that's all thoughts are continuously competing for the top dog spot, the alpha in your consciousness. But that's not the right use of consciousness. So when anger comes, just set a place for it at your table and let it cleanse you to the depths of your heart. Yet feed it not to other people or animals, nor let your tears betray your anger or your anger betray your grief. So in the Jumping Mouse story too, after Jumping Mouse fell into the river, he shook himself off. He was very frightened and he yelled at the frog who gave him the instructions. You tricked me. And Frog says, wait, do not let your fear and anger blind you. Tell me, what did you see? So when you're on the top of that, when you were on the top of the teeter-totter and you looked over into the collective unconsciousness and you see the snakes writhing in ignorance and greed and, all of that is don't let that anger blind you. What's really there? And then you kind of come back into yourself, right? Because it's there, it's in you. But it doesn't, now you don't have to be on the black road to do this. The black road teaches you how to do this. The brave, the embodiment of the brave, which we'll get into, is how you stay off the black road and still do the work. Because the black road, as some of you may have experienced, also is the path of addiction. People can get very lost there when they sort of stay on that teeter-totter. But we can visit it as a teacher. And when we set the fire for the sweat lodge, we set the fire, the fire path of the fire goes north and south. And the east and west is, we call the black road. And we bless that road as well. We bless that road, as one of our teachers. But that also, people come back to what the red road is the north-south. Okay. So enlightenment finds a cozy, self-sufficient, tiny home in the heart. Do you remember it was said that enlightenment is the state of an open heart? How does one open something that is already open, already pumping and circulating all the time? It is not possible that it could be closed. The trick is to be sure your mind is also open, or things will get stuck in you. When enlightenment flows through all of you, so does temperance become your temperament. Aligned in the understanding that the heart is the Lord, and when the Lord is happy, the kingdom is happy. When the Lord is angry, the kingdom is angry, just as the mood of the queen ant dictates the entire hill. And I'm going to go in actually and change that, because I would say that the mind is Lord. Yeah? But the heart would be, you could say, God. And Lord being Jesus, and son or child of God. So but because that sort of Lord actually has at this time more contact with the physical, with the 3D, or even you could say the mental and emotional, which are the children of the mind, it tends to have more influence at this time. But if we see that the mind is the Lord and the heart is God, and God created us in his image, yes? Okay, so there's this trickle down. We have to also understand that the mind can also take on, or, it does represent this Lord. So this king in a way. And the mood of this queen ant dictates the entire hill. So here again is the importance of the heart and mind also coming off the teeter-totter even. Okay, we'll just leave it there for now in that piece, because there is so much to teach and too much to learn. So you must learn to teach yourself to simply connect the dots as they come to you. No matter how random those connections may seem, for the unfolding of cooperation, that which seamlessly weaves complexity in voluntary simplicity. So when you feel like, oh man, I've stepped out into the river on these dots, these stepping stones, and there isn't another one, well, you might have to get into the river. Portage, so to speak, the opposite of portage, to keep going, and just accept that, oh, it may not be another clear dot. It might be something else that you have to step into to move through what's there. And you may just, rest, relax. Yes, take the nail yourself to the spot you're at right now, because probably that's where the gold is. In that place where you don't know where to go. Where do I go from here? Oh, okay, I'm going to nail myself to this place, crucify myself with the nails of Tilopa, the don'ts. It's basically all say, be here now, be here now. This place of confusion, access your courage and cultivate what is right under your feet right now. Again, I think we've said the teachings of keep your shadow at your feet always. It's right there. It's not very far to go for the brave to touch the shadow, especially when you're in confusion. Okay. And sometimes the best way, or a way, to connect the dots to, as I just said, is to follow instructions, protocols. So I've said to you, go back to the nails of Tilopa. which are designed for you to connect with your enemies and allies alike. Because really, friend and enemy, and we're going to get into this, when you're in, there is no other, there is no friend or enemy, yes? And the guides are signaling forces. They're all guides and signaling forces of your spirit, just like the ancestors send us sort of good fortune and bad fortune. They're all signaling forces. So the ancestors speaking to us. Many spirit guides, you could say with the ancestors, do not possess what we would call morals, yet an integral code of right ethic, and most certainly a good dash of what's called ethos. For there is no duality in the spirit world. This fortunate or unfortunate comes through our human filter. But in the spirit world, even to kill someone is not considered unethical. So if you are pissed off at someone, your spirit guides will take that as a sign to attack that person on some level, just as a cell attacks harmful or hurtful infections. So it is of utmost importance that one acknowledges their power, lest the cells start eating one another in the being, commonly known as cancer, though may act upon themselves in many other subtle forms of cannibalism. So in a sense, that is, actually cancer is when a cell refuses to die and it becomes this undying cell and creates more of itself. It refuses to die. So, the ethics of our society currently are death phobic. So we are basically, yes, we are a cancer upon the earth, if you will, because of our denial of death and our unwillingness to continually die. Just as cells do. Cells are continually dying and being reborn. So that you as an individuated being are a cell in the greater whole. Okay, so be clear now that spirit guides are not your own. So you may have these spirit guides, but they're not your own. They're here to guide and protect all that is, just as the elementals guide and protect nature. Same with the ancestors. They might throw you a curveball and you go, wait a minute, you're my spirit guide, my ancestor. Why are you giving me a hard time? They don't see it that way. It's just necessary to guide and protect the greater whole. And they will do it at all cost. Animals and plants, again, they possess their own kind or strain of consciousness, as do humans. They all work together. Our particular strain positions us as both a minuscule aspect of nature and all that is. So humans possess a very unique kind of consciousness. It's also a consciousness. Our brains are actually not wired for big picture thinking. They're very wired to, which in a way is good, to being in the moment or short term. But because that hasn't been fully developed, we look for short-term gratification. We're invested in having our needs met now. Never mind the bigger picture of all of life. Pretty clear, yeah? So, but we know this about ourselves. But we know kind of, again, the give and take sort of as, okay, that's one way that the brain can respond, but it also has the ability to be in the moment. It is wired for that. So we can now move into that, yeah? Okay. So everything in nature depends on your perceiving of it through our strain of consciousness. Each consciousness can enact what consciousness itself alone cannot. So consciousness has many levels and each of them has to live up to its full potential. And again, the animals, plants, stones, people all have a bit of a head start on this, right? There are teachers. And then there is truth, which goes well with everything. And everything takes care of everything in cooperation. Cooperation itself is governed also, it's very close to the spirit world, but it is governed by the laws of nature, necessary for spirits to be incarnated, which is influenced by human nature, and so of utmost importance that each one comes to know their true nature. So that is a little bit also aligned with the waking up with somebody else in your bed is your true nature. And you say, like jumping mouse, you go into the river. Who are you? Well, you're going to have to get to know them in that sort of unknowledgeable way. As a participant in this process, I have been taught in shamanism that one must master the spirits or be mastered by them. It is said, spirits respect one who has mastered their own mind. So you are the Lord over the Lord, so to speak, or you are that Lord. You're aware that you are the Lord and that your mood influences the entire hill. And also, of course, and this goes by the next phrase here is, and only by this one will the spirits allow themselves to be mastered. Because ultimately the spirits are under direction of what you might call God or consciousness. So where spirits respect one who has mastered their own mind, understands they are the Lord and their influence on the hill, and only by this one will they allow themselves to be mastered. So spirits are repelled by dependency. The mastery that produces the illuminated one takes dedication and devotion, as will getting through this reading, all these readings, which again really requires no effort, yet diligence and discipline. You may wonder, why is there so much writing in this course? Why so many words? Because this is how much misunderstanding there is. But really, we are just getting started, sorting through the laundry basket, so to speak, before you enter the first wash cycle of the spirit world, which you will after crossing the threshold. Though you came an orphaned human, you are not alone here, yet your actions your own, and it is you, not the spirits, who will be held accountable. To say my spirits guided me is a faux pas to the spirit world, just as one must never perform a miracle in public, and a shaman would not call his or herself a shaman. It doesn't mean these things aren't true or real. It is just not something to be spoken or publicly displayed. In fact, it makes the spirits cringe and not want to come out to play. And the absence of your spirit and their guides will often present as a problem. Guides can also read your mind, and if they find your conviction faltering, despite pretty words and flowery offerings, they will not come. The spirits must be sincerely invited through ceremony and prayer. One must never assume their guides are with them if they have not actually asked for help. That is to say, made appropriate means or offerings for spirits to get to you. For they need to be kept well fed and cared for as a part of your family, your loved ones. Sacrifice in the way of fasting is another form of offering to or caring for the spirits. In the words of the Prophet Muhammad, prayer gets us halfway to heaven. Fasting takes us all the way. Furthermore, in Ecclesiastes, in the Bible, it is said, give and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. And as said, when you take one step, the universe makes 1,000. The same goes for the grandmothers and grandfathers, which differ from ancestors, and appropriate offerings must be made to all. Grandmothers and grandfathers are spirits that actively tend the heart field without lifting a finger. The ancestors work farther out. An elder once told me, quote, the ancestors sit around drinking coffee and smoking unfiltered Camels until someone asks for help, unquote. When faced with what appears to be a troubling visitation, address the trouble immediately, which may be done with prayer or ceremony, a tobacco or hair offering, which communicates directly to the spirit world what is in your heart in order to allow and assist it to blossom as an experience, which feeds our understanding, which feeds the soul, the world feeding inner life of the flame in a relatively effortless way. Furthermore, when we refuse, deny, or fail to follow the instructions and protocols, the unified field is endangered, the milk of the Kachina tainted, the essential essence of the Milky Way that naturally cleanses the fourth dimension, that the higher frequencies of this, the fifth world, may go viral to invade our being. Human beings are a manifestation of and handy container for the force of all life, the non-dualistic, non-gendered living essence, also known as energy, medicine, mana, prana, or chi, which differs from power. We are made of this force and it fills us, yet adult men and women have specific roles. Women, or woman, because she was made first from the earth, nourishes and protects the earth, greens it. Man nourishes and protects the universe, and the universe nourishes and protects the earth by sending rain. In the adult, both male and female give life. Though the roles are distinct, yet always complementary and cooperative. That is to say, in union, functioning like the concentric circles cast by a pebble in a pond. As a whole, the adult, child, adolescent, and elder too have specific roles, independent of gender, as part of the full circle vision inherent in cooperation. So just as the Lord of the mind, has gotten a little mixed up, and the way that we use things. Oh, what was it? Yeah, how the brain has a tendency to work in the kind of shorter term. The child has also been filled with misunderstandings of its role, its specific role. So we're going to unravel that in this course. Your higher self knows nothing but cooperation, which can also seed conflict in one who treasures the outdated version of autonomy that clings upon one in the spirit world like saran wrap. A sign that a distorted or outdated version of autonomy is running you is that you are eking out a meager existence, filling the fridge to feed yourself and perhaps your family, and in doing so, also force feeding them to eat of the leftover scraps of independence as we had known it. So this also is all about, I have to do everything myself. Yeah. It is no wonder that so many come to depression for relief or exhaustion. But depression itself is the lack of desire to feed yourself, bathe, and go amongst the people or be with your family. So depression is an appropriate response to hopelessness and helplessness. And again, we'll talk about how depression too, some people say it's a step into consciousness. So we'll address that too as we go. So as I said, we will speak more on the good work depression can do in letting things go from outdated versions of autonomy, yet how only that which has been disabled can be let go. Depression is in a way a disease that came out of nowhere, as most modern diseases have. And so we treat it in this nowhere, in the unified field, for there are fewer risks there. So we have to sometimes, this is an alchemy, things must be separated in order to be whole. So there'll be times where we will sort of pluck depression out and be able to have a better look at it with fewer risks. So as we are seeing, there is no appropriate treatment for depression in the ordinary world, no matter how hard one works at it. Only living meaning can treat its unruly chemical responses, and this meaning must be met in the unified field, accessed via the way. If you are in alignment, straight and true with the way, ceremony will assist in keeping you that way. If you are not, she will masticate you. It is said by the old ones that the sign of a good ceremony is that one is a wreck afterwards. And as with Terence McKenna's words, this is true for those stuck in the West, those who have wandered from the sacred path. So it was actually Terence McKenna who said that. So this wreck is a signal that things are not yet in alignment. So the ceremony, has done good, so to speak. And here upon the sacred path, there is no one to finger, no one to blame, for it is the path upon which all are born innocent. As said, regret is a direct descendant of blame, whereas feeling begins with respect, which is the first protocol of ceremony and the state of being aware. Respect is the state of being aware. And at the end of this cycle, the funhouse we have been in, the only way to reality now is to feel. So it's very important that we remove that do not cross tape put out by the child, which we will get to on your emotional field. So close to being done here. Yet even in one with balanced chemical response, reasonable alignment, and the capacity to feel, the spirit of love can equally propel you onto the battlefield as bring you to a place of refuge, send you to jail as grant you freedom, all of which can occur simultaneously. I'm going to leave it there because there's actually 6 more pages, and this is enough for now. And you will find it comes this way for you too, that you will not be able to make it through a whole step in one go. I know I can't. It takes me days. So, but you have a week, at least. You get one step and usually one stone per week. So you can space it out. Don't space out, but space out the attention you bring to these steps and stones, and then go just have a little break, which I'm going to do now. And then you will come back and you will read the remainder, which I believe starts on page 24. I will highlight it. It'll be highlighted so you'll know where to pick it up again. All right. See you soon. Bye-bye.